Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
Welcome to episode 25 of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Chris Hill with my co-host, Sean Winter. Today on the show, we have John Rivers, restaurant entrepreneur of the award-winning Rivers Smokehouse. But before we jump in, Sean, let's give a quick word from our sponsor, the Cordon Bleu.
That's right. For anybody ready to turn your ambitions into reality, for more than 120 years, the name Le Cordon Bleu has been synonymous with culinary excellence. From cuisine, food design, nutrition, to wine, and hospitality management, Le Cordon Bleu offers a wide range of programs for aspiring culinary professionals to become part of a great tradition of excellence with credentials that will set you apart from the competition in a demanding and changing industry. Apply now at cordonbleu.edu. And with that, Chris, I'm super excited to talk with John. He is an amazing guy. I ended up connecting with him at something called Startup Grind. Do you guys have that where you're at, Startup Grind?
We don't, but I'm definitely familiar with it. And from what I've heard, I'm just going to get right into it. I'm a huge barbecue guy. He's scaled their restaurants pretty well, hasn't he?
Oh, my God. It's incredible. They started off in this tiny location around the corner from my house now. I think like maybe it was 1,000 square feet or something. We'll have to ask him, but tiny place. And there used to be a line out the door, and he took that one single location, and now I think there's over a dozen. I want to say there's like 13, maybe 14 or something locations. They've got his barbecue sauce in the grocery store that you can get. What he's been able to do is just amazing. Chris, I'm so excited. What do you say we jump in?
Oh yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, so today we have John Rivers. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Sean.
Outstanding. So just to kind of kick things off, if you can give us a little bit of background on yourself and how did you get started with this company, Rivers?
Well, the first word that comes to mind is backwards. I grew up when I was in Jacksonville as a kid. If you asked me back then what I wanted to be when I grew up, my first answer was going to be a restaurant owner, a cook. I absolutely loved it. It's kind of funny. It wasn't in our family, and we didn't grow up in it. And I always say, jokingly, I love my mom, but her favorite room in the house was definitely not the kitchen. So even learning how to cook was just not in our natural line. But I had a propensity for it. I had a passion for it from as a child, and I grew up working in restaurants all the way through high school and all the way through college. But, a little disruption in life happened in college. We had a breakup of the family and changed kind of a projection a little bit. And it made me determined to go into business and to big business and to be able to support myself. And so I set my mind out on becoming a president and or CEO of a pharmaceutical company, of a large pharmacy company. And lo and behold, about 15, 16 years after graduating, I found myself exactly in that position. I was the president of we were $1.5 billion pharmacy, and we were serving oncology patients, cancer patients all over the country. But it was funny. An odd thing happened. When I actually became the president and achieved what I thought was my goal, I started realizing, this is not what I wanted to do with my life. And the reason I realized it because I wasn't passionate about it. It was really the achievement of the goal itself that was driving me. Once I got there, I realized something's missing in my life. And I always say to people, if you're not doing what you're passionate about, first try to bring passion into what you're doing. And if that doesn't work, quite frankly, go find something that you're passionate about and pour your life into that. Now, in the meantime, something happened. We got a mistaken phone call back in 2015 or 2005 from a lady, and the call wasn't intended to be to me, but she mistakenly thought that my daughter Cameron had cancer, terminal brain cancer, and she called to wish us her prayers and condolences in it. And as it turned out, thank God it wasn't my daughter, but that one mistaken phone call led me into finding out who this family was And we ended up, trying to support them and help them. And they wouldn't take money from me for little Megan was their daughter's name, but they would allow me to do a barbecue fundraiser for them at their church. And now the funny thing about this is when I graduated from college, I moved out to Texas. And I'm a Florida boy. I moved out to Texas, and I say I met the two loves of my life when I was out in Texas, my beautiful wife, Monica, and Brisket, when I was there for the very first time. And I'm proud to say I brought both of them back to Florida, as a matter of fact. Well, when I found out about Brisket, never had it before, literally for the next, 18 plus years, I went around the country trying to find the best brisket and then trying to master it, make it myself. And it's kind of funny, Sean, even though I was in healthcare and following what I thought was my path, there I was all along, every single week, every single day, thinking about brisket, thinking about barbecue. And as a matter of fact, my wife and I would just have these long conversations of this style of restaurant that we could open that would put our employees and our guests first. And we would change the face of barbecue in Florida, move it away from just pork, de-regionalize it, bring brisket in there, but and change the service style, change everything about it. But most importantly, build a business that had a purpose and a passion. Okay, and this is long before the phone call happened. So we do this event for this beautiful little girl. 450 people come to it. They RSVP. Up to this point, I'd only cooked barbecue in my backyard on my little egg. And I had no idea how to cook for 450 people or store it or serve it. And literally, by the grace of God, it all came together 10 days later. We pulled off the event. We served all those 450 people. We raised a lot of money for this beautiful little girl. And I always joke and say, number 3, nobody got sick in the process of it. Well, what that was the beginning of what we called our barbecue ministry. Literally, for the next 4 years, anytime kids or schools or churches needed money, I would offer to write them a check, but I'd also offer, hey, can I bring out my smoker and I'd cook for you? And all the money that we get from the event will go back to, whatever the organization was. Well, we did this for the next 4 years. And year over year, it got bigger and bigger. And all this time, I'm actually still in my job doing healthcare. What I didn't realize, the reason that I loved it so much was because it was for the first time I was combining that passion that I had, that I was born with, that was put in my heart of cooking and serving, and I was combining that with doing good, with helping other people. And I look back now, that was the foundation of what Four Rivers is today. That set the roots, that garnered us of who we were. Well, you fast forward 4 years after that, back in 2009, and we built a little commissary on Fairbanks Road. That little commissary, it wasn't supposed to be a restaurant. It was supposed to be a place we could run the ministry out, because the ministry had grown so large. That last year, out of our garage, we served over 40,000 people. And wow. The truth is we had to get out of the house. My wife kicked us out of the house, actually, because we were making such an absolute mess in it. So we moved. We built this little restaurant, a commissary that turned into a restaurant. And from day one, from there, we never lost sight of our purpose. And I think this is core to the strategy. If the purpose of a business, or let's say restaurants in particular, is to simply make profit and to make money, I don't think it'll survive long term. Wherever your focus is, that's what you're going to make all of your decisions around. If you think about it, if all my decisions were around just making more money, I'm going to compromise my guests. I'm going to compromise my team. I'm going to compromise my product. But if my purpose is our purpose was to impact lives, you have to have, a company has to have a purpose. Quite frankly, I contend a company has to have a conscience. It has to have a leading principle that's guiding it. And when ours was to impact lives, everything that we do around that should be judged by that. And my job as a leader is to make sure we have over 1,500 folks on the team now, to make sure that every single team member understands they're not just serving and selling a brisket sandwich today. They're impacting a life by everything that they do. And when I can get the team in that mode and thinking it and viewing what they do on a day-to-day basis of having a much greater purpose and just making a profit and serving a sandwich, that's when the magic happens. That's when everybody gets passionate about the brand and passionate about their job. And it's funny, I read something a long time ago, I very much believe, the level of excitement for the brand and for what you're doing of the customer can never exceed the level of excitement of the team and the employees. So if we want the customer and our guests to be excited about what we're doing, it's my job as a leader to make sure that the team is excited and embraces the brand and is passionate about it. So to answer your question the long way, we never intended to actually be in the restaurant business. I went 20 years in healthcare, discovered and remembered what my passion was, walked away from a great position as the president of that company to follow my passion and run our ministry. And that little ministry has grown today. We have 15 restaurants, and we have 2 other divisions in manufacturing and retail. And people said, is it your plan to, your dream to always have this? And I always say, absolutely not. We didn't set out to build a restaurant chain. We set out with a vision of creating a company that had a purpose. We set out to impact lives and trying to find ways to enrich the community. And I still use that today as our guiding light and our vision.
That's incredible. I love that. And I think a lot of us forget that we are in the industry of serving people, and it's neat to see how you're able to take serving people in one regard and then parlaying that into something else that you're really passionate about as well. So that's very cool. Now, I know when you're starting out, some folks said, everyone around here eats pork barbecue, brisket will never work. What was that kind of process like? I know you had some influential folks as well that you got to speak with as you were opening up to kind of help move you guys along.
Oh, Lord, we had naysayers everywhere. When we set out to do this, you hear all the accolades of, 8 out of 10 restaurants fail, actually more than that, in their first, I think, 3 years. And when we started to talk about what we were building, okay, now granted, think about it, we were taking an old gas station in a terrible area of town where there were no other restaurants whatsoever. Okay, we're going to build a little restaurant there that highlights and leads with brisket. Okay, now brisket is not prevalent in Florida. It's not prevalent in the Southeast, especially 8 years ago when we started this. This was at the time of the demise of Smoky Bones. Okay, and Smoky Bones was separating from Darden. They were divesting it simply because of what they called barbecue regionalization. Each area that they were growing into had very specific niches. Well, so you have that current coming against us. I'm saying that we're going to serve brisket, and not only are we going to serve brisket first, okay, and lead with that, we're going to make people sit at picnic tables. We're not going to have tableside dining. They're going to come through a line. We're actually going to see the food in front of them, and we're going to engage the customer. It was, every naysay I heard was, it was every day, literally. Somebody was going to tell us why we were going to fail. It's a terrible location. You can't serve brisket in the South. Pork, you have to have pork, and you got to leave it that. You can't make people sit at picnic tables. You're going to make them eat off the trays? Oh, there's no plates? On and on and on. And all of that naysay was the basis of our strategy that differentiated us against, literally, if you dropped a pin at our first location in a 20-mile radius, we found over 92 barbecue places in 20-mile radius around us. And you know what? All 92 of them did the exact same thing. Exact same thing. And the only way they were differentiating themselves was price and all-you-can-eat specials and salad bars, stuff like that, not the barbecue. So we purposely came in from the strategy of differentiating ourselves by serving something that was completely different. It had to be exceptional. It couldn't be, the brisket that people had tried before, and serving it in a different manner and embracing the community and serving them in a family style that complemented what I think is barbecue. And when I think of barbecue, it's community, it's family. Hence, that's why we have the picnic tables. And we're going to embrace them by differentiating ourselves, but not only focusing just on the primary protein as being great, but I want every single item that we serve, be it a side or be it the desserts, that has to be exceptional. And that was another way that we differentiated ourselves. every single item that you have when you come into our smokehouse, we actually cook right there on site. Nothing is pre-made, nothing is brought in. It's made from scratch on a daily basis. And does that generate higher costs? Absolutely, it does. But you know what? It produces a better quality product. It's, to me, it's in the integrity of the way that you serve your guests. You got to make sure that you're always putting the very best thing out there. And quite frankly, I think that's the reason that people line up like they do, because they know they're going to get that quality. And more importantly, they know they're going to be treated as I tell everyone on our team, you treat everyone that walks in that door like friends and family. You treat them with love. You treat them with respect. If they don't like what they have, don't ask questions. Just swap it out. Give them something different. If they want their money back, give them their money back. And quite frankly, I tell them too, if they're not full, give them more food. Just like you let somebody coming into your house. When you do that, that's why people come back.
Wow, John. And so one thing, to put it in perspective, how many square feet was that first location?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. That first little place, okay, was all of 1,100 square feet, okay? No inside dining, nothing. That place was so small. Now, to put it in real perspective, okay, the average restaurant, barbecue restaurant, they do, let's say, about $1 million, maybe $1.25 million, somewhere in there. Okay, and these can be very big, large footprints. Okay, that little teeny place. Okay, back then we were doing over $5 million out of 1,100 square feet, and you talk about an orchestrated dance. Okay, it was so tight in that little teeny kitchen, you could not move the wrong way, especially if you had something sharp in your hands. So, everybody knew, everyone anticipated, the flow and what people were doing, where they were going to do it. Now, as tough as that was, on top of how tough it was for us to actually get that place open, okay, that challenge brought our team together. It galvanized us as a team. And at the end of the day, that set our culture with determination that no matter what the obstacle is, we're going to overcome it. And so even though it was so hard and so difficult, I'm so grateful that we had those days, because without those, because the challenges never go away. People think, okay, you're open 2 or 3 years and you get past that 3-year mark and it's smooth sailing. Baloney. We still face challenges, today, like we did back then. They're just bigger now. Now we got 15 sites and, multiple cities and multiple states that we have to manage. So without that learned perseverance that we had to endure and garner through with all those challenges back then, these challenges that we face today, I think would be even a greater obstacle. Today we face them, they come up, hey, no problem. We can overcome it as a team because we built that trust with each other.
And Chris, before you ask the question, I just want to say, so I went to the original location and I saw the evolution of Four Rivers here in Orlando in the Winter Park area. And it was like, John, it was like a cult following that you were amassing with this barbecue. Chris, it was incredible. And I actually pulled up a review. I want to just read this really quick and then Chris, ask your question. But it just sums up perfectly my sentiments for Four Rivers. The gentleman said, "Where do I start? How about this? Mother, period, of, period, God, period." I heard good things about this place from a friend who's a bit of a foodie, but not really close to home, so I hadn't had a chance to check it out. I was in the area one morning and stopped by for breakfast. Best, period, decision, period, ever, period. And he talks about the staff and everything, but truly, Chris, this tiny little place would have a line of people out, and you're talking Florida, you're talking hot. We have 2 seasons down here, hot and hotter, and people would stand in line for it. It was incredible. So everything that you said, I can truly attest to it because I saw it play out in real time.
I used to feel so bad, but those people are sitting out there waiting in line in the heat and in the rain, and that's why we run samples out. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but when people are out there, even today, waiting in line, that's part of the job of the people who work the front room, is you bring those people samples. And I did it back then because, oh my gosh, they're waiting so long, they got to be hungry. Let's get them some food. And then we put the water station out. And then we put the lemonade station, a tea station out. And, more critics would say, why are you giving them food? Why are you giving them drinks? You're losing sales. And I said, because they're our guests. These are our guests waiting out there, and they eat. You take care of them. Yeah.
John, I was listening to a talk you gave, I believe at Rollins College down there, and you were speaking of capitalization and how you feel like maybe one of the things that helped you guys in the early days was not being super capitalized to where you had to be resourceful, where you had to persevere through challenges. But you can talk about that dynamic of, being just right, of having enough money but not too much to where you feel like you can spend it wherever you want.
Yeah, that's an interesting business concept. So many companies, they fail because of undercapitalization, and that's legitimate. Now, I would also contend that companies will long-term fail if there's, they have a chance of it if there's overcapitalization. And the reason being is they don't learn how to run the business from an efficient perspective. And I still contend that one of our blessings in the beginning, we had to raise $500,000 to open the first store. When we opened those doors, we'd only raised $188,000 of it. Okay? We were operating, from the rear, in the red from day one. Now, what that taught us is you had to be efficient on every front. It wasn't just from operating expenses. It was from investments. It was from growth. It was from hiring people. And if you don't have the money, well, you know what? I'm just going to work more hours. I'm going to put my heart, my sweat into it. And it's the strategy of growth from a financial perspective is, the analogy I use is if you're holding a rubber band, okay? And that rubber band is your operations, okay? And, as the operations grow, all right, the rubber band becomes stretched and stretched and stretched, okay? My objective as the CEO is to stretch it, just as far as it possibly can go without ever allowing it to break or to snap. Then when it gets to that point, you know what? Then I add more rubber to it, right? And then we do the same process. We stretch it and stretch it and stretch it. And my team has got comfortable and confident, and this is something that you have to build with them, is that level of trust. You tell me, we call it the white flag. You raise the white flag when you've got too much, when you just can't handle it anymore. And they have learned, we've garnered that trust from them, that they will push it, and know that when they raise the white flag to me, then I'll hire another FTE. I'll get another resource to come in behind them. And you know what? We grow that again. We stretch that. And, having that confidence, there's a propensity, a willingness on their part to push and to stretch that part because they know they can get relief. And quite frankly, they know they are the control. They have the valve of when to bring that relief in.
Now, in relation to that, so it sounds like you prefer building organically versus just bringing in a bunch of capital. Is that correct? Was that kind of the strategy along the way?
Well, each store, we went through a phase of thinking we had to get bigger footprints. Okay, well, bigger footprints. You look at some of our largest stores that we have, and some of our oldest ones. They're 6,000 square feet plus. Okay. And to build that kind of footprint, it's a tremendous amount of capital to open it. So each store we did do capital raises for. They weren't institutional capitalization. It was private investors. It was friends of mine. Most importantly, people who share the vision of why we're doing what we're doing. I don't have any institutional investors in our portfolio that are strictly just looking for profit for two reasons. One, I would interview everybody who wanted to invest, and I'd weed those entities or those people out. And two, quite frankly, they wouldn't like what we're doing. The amount of earnings that we give away in donations and put back into the community because we stick to our roots of being that ministry. A lot of people would shudder at that from an investment perspective. And the other piece of it too is, from day one, we have spent more money on training than we ever have on advertising. We give away more money than we ever have in promotions and advertising and We actually had 1 year that I'm proud about. My CFO was not that excited, and I'm happy it was 1 year because I can say it. But we had 1 year where we actually gave away more in donations than we kept in actual earnings at the end of the day. And so when you're giving that much away, or you're putting that much back into the team, the capitalization pool is not enough to build these footprints, and that's why we've gone out and we've brought in outside capital. So at the moment, we haven't got our strategy really lined out for our next stores. So far, every time either somebody has stepped in or the capitalization has become available, that has given me the fortunate position of not having to go get loans and not going out to investment bankers and stuff like that to grow. So we'll see what happens in the future.
When John, you spoke of spending more money on training and giving back into the community. I know that's really part of y'all's long-term marketing advertising strategy of sorts. Maybe you could speak on that for a moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The equity of any brand is its people. When you think about it, I can make the recipes and we can design the brands or the logos and this and that. But at the end of the day, who's interfacing with your guests? Who's in the kitchen actually making those recipes? We learned something very, very interesting. It's about a year ago. We changed course because we were putting more and more money into, especially the farther you go away from the hub, the more you have to tell the story, the more you have to put into some advertising funds to get the word out there. We realized, wow, we need to dedicate as much time, effort, focus, and funding for promotion and advertising on our team as we do to the outside community. Because it's our team who are the spokespeople. And we shifted gears completely, and we came up with programs and messaging and things, because people ask me all the time, what's one of the most difficult things that you have and that you face? And one of those things is how do we maintain this culture as we go farther and farther away? And it's, it doesn't happen organically, especially when you have so many young kids who work for us. They work for us during high school. They work for college. Well, you know what? Best thing is they graduate and they move on. So that creates turnover. So when they leave, they take all that knowledge of culture with them. Right now, I got to start all over again. So you have to continuously invest in that culture to make sure everybody completely embraces it. This is not. We're not selling brisket sandwiches to make profit. We're selling brisket sandwiches to change lives, to help the community, to help impact people that are out there who need a helping hand.
And now, in relation to the employees, let's just say, what's your take on hiring in terms of what do you look for? How do you ensure that you're bringing on people that truly buy in the mission? Even if you have a unique question through the years that you throw out at somebody in an interview to really vet them, what's some of your thoughts on hiring the right people to maintain that culture?
As you ask that, it reminds me of a long time ago in an interview, back in the early days. There was a reporter, and she says to me, she says, I don't get it. Every time I go into a Four Rivers, no matter which location it is, everyone's just so darn happy. They're smiling and it's sincere. You can always tell when it's fake. I hate it when you walk in a restaurant and say, "Hey, welcome to whatever it is," and everybody screams, "Come on, that's not real." And she said, it's how do you find these people? And my response was very quick, and it didn't mean to be curt, okay? But it was. I looked at her and I said, "We don't find them, we make them," and I stand by that today. I learned a very important lesson, okay, with people management. The folks that you manage, they will act the way you treat them. And if you want them to treat the guests with love and respect and joy and happiness, that means that we have to manage them that way. So to answer your question, we do look for people that want to embrace a positive work environment, who have that, servant heart. People who are just happy, because no matter what we do, there's some people we can pour into. If they don't want to be happy, that's a choice. Okay, they're not going to be happy. But the ones who do, now I will say that we get a lot of folks in who don't start that way. And it's not their fault. They've worked in different places, especially in the restaurant industry. It's tough to find a positive work environment. So they come in with a little bit of their guard up. And I love watching them change. That our job as the leaders are to pour into our managers, pour in that love and respect, and so that they get it, they are treated that way, and then they're going to treat the frontline people that way. And what's really interesting is that when we pour in the love and respect into the directors and VPs, they pour into the managers. They then pour it into the employees. And you know what? Those frontline team people, they pour it into the guests. And that's the only way that it can be sincere and trickle all the way down. So we do look for certain traits, but it's our job. I tell my managers, everybody has the potential to be great. It's our job as managers to create the environment and to inspire them for that greatness to come out.
Love that. I know we need to wrap up here in a quick moment. I just wanted to make a little more thought, and if you have anything to add, John, and again, in listening to one of your talks, you're speaking on, as you guys grow, obviously you have management that you might want to move up the ranks, as y'all grow, and you tell them, well, show me your replacement. What exactly is that? I love that.
Yeah, that's always an interesting first-time request that we give to managers and GMs. I ask them to come in once a year and write on a piece of paper who's going to replace them, who's going to take their job. And I laughed and I said the first time, because they kind of look at me like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my job. And once again, it goes back to that trust and that relationship, which is really the key to any successful business. It's, I tell them, I explain, I can't move you up. I can't move you to another position knowing that your job, your function that you're doing today might be in jeopardy. And the sooner that you secure that, the greater the ability you give yourself to move to a different position. And once they see that and they trust it, it's amazing. They will pick that person, and then it becomes like an inherent training program that now they're going to pour their heart and their soul into this person and to prepare them to move up. And what's really interesting, even though it starts from a kind of a self-centered perspective, okay, I'm going to do this so I can move up, it's the transformation that's really beautiful to watch. They begin now not doing it just from a self-centered perspective, but now they start to truly care about this person, and they really want them to move up and get promoted and want to see them become successful. And a lot of times, when that next position comes available, I'll have the manager say, do you mind if I just stay here? But I think that this person's ready to take it. And I absolutely love seeing that.
So, John, as you were scaling this company, what were some of the hurdles you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Oh, my goodness. Dan Kathy from Chick-fil-A stepped into our life when we were facing probably some of the greatest struggles that we had, and that was during the opening period. And he befriended me, and I was so grateful for it. And he poured into me for years, and he still does, for advice and for help and for, confidence in doing what we're doing. And I'll never forget, it was probably after our second year, and it was around the Christmas period, and we were having a call. I was just asking him questions. And I said to him back then, this is when I think we either had just one or maybe two stores. I said, Dan, I think we can scale this model. And what should be some of the things that I should prepare and think about now so that I'm ready when we have 10, 15, 20 stores? His answer absolutely surprised me. He laughed at me. He said, John, the challenges that you will face when you have 10 and 15 and 20 stores are you can't even define them today. They're not on your radar. And the encouragement it was such great advice. Focus on the challenges that you have today. And you're not going to get to those challenges 5 years from now unless you get through the obstacles that you're facing today. So, it was great advice because, back then, how do you go from one store to two store? It was learning that division between, operations and vision and leadership, separating a CEO from a CFO or COO. It was, how do I scale the culture? We go to 3 stores. And, these lessons, I wish I could say they were all planned out how we're going to overcome them, but they weren't. You don't know what that challenge is going to be until you take that step. But if you build that structure, that willingness of the team, like I mentioned earlier, to embrace that challenge when it comes and not be fearful about it, and to figure out a way collectively working as a team to overcome it, you will overcome them. So, I contend, heck, we face challenges this year that we've never had before. They were different from 3 years ago when we had half the number of stores. And I fully anticipate that, if we're so blessed that we continue to grow 5 years from now, there's going to be challenges that, gosh, I can't even fathom at the moment. So it's less of here's how to overcome or prepare for this specific challenge. The more important message is get that team in the mindset of when it does come, which they will, how do we band together? How do we have that trust with each other? How do we collectively solve the problem quickly and to overcome it? That's the most important thing.
One thing, John, that I wanted people to understand, and I heard you talk about this before, is your process of dialing in your recipe all of those years before you even had a store. Can you just talk about that for a moment? Because obviously it's food business, and I really want people to understand just your thought process behind it and what you went through and the level of detail that you had.
That's a great question. There are 2 pieces of advice I give people. I think there's a lot of young folks who have great ideas for businesses. It's going to change the world. It's going to do all this, and a lot of them are. Let's just focus on restaurant people. A lot of folks come in. They love to cook. They have great recipes. They know how to do this. And the first thing I'll ask them is, "That's fantastic. I love your concept. How long have you worked in the restaurant industry?" And you would be surprised how many will say never. Never. And, the first piece of advice I give folks is, whatever your idea is, go get experience. Go work in that industry. Go work from somebody else. Learn from all the mistakes that they have learned from and gain all that experience before you take that step. The second piece of advice I give them, something I very much believe in, something I came up with years ago, is invest a little, learn a lot. Invest a little, learn a lot. So many of these folks come in and they are willing to invest all the money they have, all their family's money, all the capital on a concept they haven't tested yet. And they ask me, "Well, have you tested?" And I tell them this, and they say, "Well, how did you test yours?" And if you think back about it, those 4 years, okay, of the ministry work that we did, that we were serving brisket and doing all those events, every single one of those events, I was garnering information. I was garnering experience. I was taking customer feedback back and making changes. And even before that, those 15, 16 years, it took me 18 years to develop the recipe for the brisket. And I was so anal about this. I was traveling. This is when I was in healthcare. And I go all over the country. And I had this Excel spreadsheet that I made. And along the bottom, all the tabs are the different meats and the different sides. And I go and I try something, and I would go back to that tab, and I'd write the profile down. Okay, here's what I want to target. This is the best ribs I found in the country. This is the best pulled pork. How do I duplicate that? And if you scroll down all the columns in the cells, it was date by date by date. Anything that I would change would be, the rib, the type of meat, the rub, what I put in the rub, the temperature of the smoke, the type of wood. All this I was just logging and logging over all those years. And, it was all that preparation until finally I locked in, okay, my brisket's going to be from this region. All right. And this is the best one I have. And I think I emulated that. My ribs came from North Carolina. My pulled pork came from Alabama. My tri-tip came from California. And what was funny, it was unintentional, but if you look at our flavor profiles, and I think this is one of the reasons that the model has been able to scale, it's not so prominently dedicated to one region. And when you prominently dedicate your flavor profiles to one region, that means you exclude all the rest of the country and all the rest of the people. So folks can come in, and if they like that, vinegar base, they can get a vinegar based item. They want the tomato, they want they'll taste for different regions that they seem to appreciate. And that was specifically prevalent in the sauce. That dang sauce took me 4 years to make. And because remember, I'm not a chef. I'm throwing this stuff together on my own by watching Emerald and Paula Deen on TV and taping their shows and teaching myself how to cook. And that sauce was intentionally designed so that it's not too heavy or prevalent in one specific region of sauce flavor.
So, in kind of closing, John, you indirectly there, I think, basically said you did what I suggest for a lot of folks to do is instead of going from, all right, I had this great job in pharmaceutical to, all right, I'm going to open up this restaurant and we're going to be super successful. Instead, you built, what my buddy Jeff Goins calls building a bridge, where you had the really good job that provided for you and your family, and then along the way you rediscovered your passion and you created the ministry you were speaking of with the barbecue, and that really helped create the foundation for the restaurant. Talk a bit about what that process was like, and I assume you'd encourage other folks to do the same.
I would, and this is a great question to close with too. I do believe that everyone when they're born, they're given a specific gift, okay, to be great at one thing. And that's it. Call it your calling, call it your passion, call it whatever you like to. You can go through your life, okay, and ignore that. And I would contend, now this is me, talking about me. You think you're going in the right direction, but you just never feel that fulfillment. And when your actions align to what that passion is, when your work and your passion line up, that changes everything you do. There's no counting hours in work. The money doesn't matter. Everything else goes by the wayside because you just love what you're doing. And I contend to people too that when your actions and your job lines up to where those passions are, success is going to come because you're doing what you're intended to be doing. A lot of people will find themselves in the wrong position in life, and they know it. And one of the things I encourage them about is don't wait for that perfect situation to present itself, okay, where all the risks are gone, because quite frankly, it never does. To take a step into something that's going to have a reward, it means there has to be some type of risk involved. And I did this myself. My encouragement is sometimes you have to take yourself out of the wrong position and the wrong situation or the wrong relationship, okay, in order to allow yourself to be open and find that right position or that right relationship. And as long as you stay in that wrong place, you really prohibit yourself from finding that next right place to be to. So, when I left healthcare, everyone thought, oh, he's got this great plan. He's just going to immediately go into open this restaurant. No, that's baloney. It was 2 years later, but I knew I had to leave the position that my heart was not in order to make sure to help find that where I had to find where my heart was going to be. And the longer I stayed in that wrong position, not only felt I was cheating the company, I was cheating myself. And so my encouragement is, take that step. If you know you're in the wrong position, be willing to take a risk and move away from it and find out what your heart is calling and go after that.
Outstanding.
Incredible.
Well, John, thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible. Your insights, your story, it's inspirational, it's actionable. We love it. So thank you so much for being a guest today.
My pleasure. And I appreciate you guys spending the time. I really do.
Thank you, John. Keep up the great work.
Guys, take care. God bless you. Bye-bye now.
You too. Bye-bye. And that was our conversation with John Rivers. Sean, that was fun. Made me hungry. What did you take away from it?
There was two things that really stuck out to me, Chris. I think the first one was when he was talking about just focusing on money. And if you do that, you lose sight of what's important. I heard something recently. It was an analogy when someone said that the purpose of a human body is not just the production of red blood cells and pushing blood through the body, that it's so much more than that. And if you cut off your blood, obviously you die. And they were using that as an analogy for businesses and money. A lot of people think that money is the reason why a business should exist, or that's the most important thing, because if you cut off money, it dies. But it's just like the body. If you cut off the blood, sure, the body's going to die, but that's not the sole purpose. We don't wake up every single day just to produce blood. We have so much more. And his point about focusing not just on the money, you got to focus on the other things that are important, and having a mission and having a vision, I think is just so true. And that's where a lot of people mess up in business, because they focus on the money. So that was huge for me. Another thing was the level of excitement of a brand can never exceed the excitement of a team. I think that was a really interesting statement that he made. And I could see in retrospect, looking back over my career, where I made that mistake, and I've seen other people make that mistake now that he said that. So I think that's really important. Your level of excitement for the brand cannot exceed the level of excitement for your team, because your team is going to fuel the brand. So those two things are really powerful for me. What about you, Chris?
I absolutely agree. Yeah, it was one of the first things that really struck me was that he said, you invest a little bit and you learn a lot. I think a lot of us, whether it's time, energy, money, we are not willing to make these small sacrifices that can really have a really large output and can really tell us a lot about the product we have and things of that nature. So I think, being willing to invest small amounts of time or money or energy into little projects, and then sitting back and, like him, he had these journals of the temperatures of the barbecue and the humidity on all that kind of stuff. And he only invested a little bit here and there, but the returns are obviously turned out to be really great for him. And the second thing is, I think it's pretty awesome that Dan Kathy, the son of Chick-fil-A founder Truett Cathy, came by the restaurant in the early days and gave him some advice, saying that the challenges you face 10 years from now are entirely different ones than you'll face, right now. I think a lot of us don't take the proper course or action because we think that we'll have these problems, at this certain point, at this certain time down the road. But in reality, we'll learn the things we need to now to be able to properly, deal with those down the road. And you really have no way of knowing, how to face something 10 years from now because you haven't experienced things, leading up to that. So I think it's just, like he said, just being kind of where your feet are is super important, especially as we are, are in this challenging industry and just have to take things kind of one day at a time. And with that, let us know what you think about the conversation. We had a blast connecting with John. If you were ever in the Southeast, definitely stop by one of the locations and see what all the craze is about. Thank you, John, for joining us. And to sign off, here's a quick quote from him saying, "The level of excitement for your brand can never exceed the level of excitement for your team." And with that, we're signing off.